Well, that was lovely. That was a lovely way to play us on in to another kitchen party, another episode of the show. I'm going to unmute people, and then I'm going to remove this slide, and we'll see who's here and who's been playing us in. Hello! Hello, world. Yes. And Jared's here even. That's always it's always good to have the person who is actually cooking on the stream. Yes,
Bear.
hello folks at home. Welcome to another kitchen party. That was the gentle tunes that you just heard bringing us in. We're courtesy of Emmanuel Clement, who is one of our guests this afternoon. What am I gonna? What order am I gonna do this in? I think hello. That's you. Hey, you're on screen and you're in chat.
Oh, I am not.
Okay.
That's cheating.
Spelling your phone. I'll be able to do that later.
All right. What am I going to do? I think first I'm going to ask Jared. Say hello to Jared and ask him what he's going to cook today. And then I'm going to go around and see who we have joining us in the virtual kitchen, joining us virtually in Jared's kitchen in Seattle this afternoon. So actually, before I start this, if you are watching this for the first time, somehow you have tuned in, kitchen party. Jared is located in Seattle, Washington. I am in Toronto, Canada, and the rest of our guests are in various places. Well, actually, I think we'll find out when we talk to them. But through the magic of the internet, we can all hang out in Jared's kitchen and enjoy our own beverages in the comfort of home and soft pants while we watch him cook something. And so once again this week this month, this whatever time has no meaning anymore, he is going to prepare something elaborate and delicious that will take about 2 hours, and we're going to watch and occasionally check in on what he's doing. And in the meantime, while that's going on, we're just gonna hang out and chat in the kitchen. So Jared, what are you cooking for us today? What are you holding in your hand? Look at that.
It's pumpkin time. I hate pumpkin pie.
Uh-oh.
Does something happen? Does something break?
Oh, your video is a little janky, but
no.
We can live with it.
Of course it is. It's been that kind of morning,
Okay.
What I'm going to be making is called Ghapama, and it's basically pumpkin stuffed with rice and dried fruit and nuts.
And what is Ghapama? What is the cultural origin of Ghapama?
It is Armenian. I think originally they used like zucchini or something, but when the Columbian exchange happened, they started using pumpkins. I'm not sure. So you can do it with other things too. I know, like even now they do it with like eggplant or whatever, but I'm going with pumpkin. This is going to be an adventure. And I find the idea of cutting into a pumpkin kind of upsetting. So that's also going to be an adventure because I cannot. This is so silly. This is so silly, but I cannot how sentient. So
you could you repeat that?
I can't help seeing pumpkins as somehow sentient. So it's going to be really awkward to just kind of lobotomize this one.
Can you unpack that for a minute? Is it because they are head shaped?
No. They just look like creatures. I don't know why. They look like they can experience things. And I don't get that with most other fruit. So I don't know. I'm gonna feel very bad about this.
They trigger your mirror
neurons. I tried not to pick a pumpkin. I tried not to pick a pumpkin I thought was too cute.
Jared, is there any way you could like turn your internet off and turn your Wi-Fi off and turn it on again or something? Because it's buggy. It's jumping quite a bit.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can do about it?
Give
Could
me
you
a second.
reboot it? Okay, because you have a minute to do that because I will now talk to some of the other people on the chat. So if you want to like quietly reboot your modem or
Okay.
something, whatever, do what you got to do.
I'll turn it off and turn it back on
Yeah,
again.
exactly. Okay, so while he's doing that, I'm gonna put Primi in the. I'm gonna unmute. You can unmute yourself. Hello, Primi.
Hello.
And where are you? Where in the world is Primi Mohammed today?
I am in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is the mountain time zone, so it's like 1 o'clock here.
Nice. So you are Primi, for those of you who are not familiar, is a prolific writer of books about the world ending and the world having already ended and people trying to figure out what to do and the universe ending and just basically, all of your fears coming true. Do you want to tell us a bit about like what's coming out lately, highlights, what you're
Sure.
working on?
Yeah, it's funny. Someone commented that on Twitter the other day. That it was just an offhand comment, something about, yeah, she writes great stuff about the end of the world. So I like stole that and used that in like a social media graphic. Like great stuff about the end of the world. Most recently, my book with Small Press Neon Hemlock and What Can We Offer You Tonight won a Nebula Award and like 2 weeks ago a World Fantasy Award. So
Nice.
really proud of that one. Hope people support small presses. This is mostly what I'm working on right now is the sequels to this, the Annual Migration of Clouds, which won an Aurora Award and came out with ECW Press. And then next thing, and sorry, the cover. So this is my advanced copy. But yeah, I have a story collection coming out next May with Undertow Publications, and that's going to be kind of like dark fantasy, horror, and like I guess dark sci-fi. Because when we were looking at theming the collection, he was like, "Well, I don't want anything like nice or uplifting or whimsical or heartwarming." I was like, "Oh, well, I'll see what I can find."
I'm your person.
I'm your man, yeah. So yeah, thank you for inviting me to come today.
Oh, you're welcome. Who shall we? Laura, are you ready? I'm gonna pop you in the hot seat just quickly.
I'm ready. Yeah, I'm ready. Hi.
Hello. And where are you located?
I'm in Toronto, up the hill from you. And
that's right.
Yeah, way up the hill. And I'm a conservator, so I do conservation restoration of museum objects. So I've been doing that for about 12 years now. And
so cool.
Prior to that, I mostly did artwork and my own artwork, but I switched to doing the conservation. Went back to school, did that. So right now I'm currently the conservator at the Bata Shoe Museum in Toronto, which has been around since the 90s. And prior to that, I was working at the City of Toronto, both in their libraries and their museums. So that's
explain for the non-Torontonians, because I think this is confusing to people who are not Torontonians. Why does Toronto have a shoe museum?
Yes,
what is the Bata Shoe Museum?
I've lived in Toronto since it opened, and of course Toronto has a shoe museum. So this is. I would encourage people to look up the Wikipedia entry because I'm not really well versed yet in telling the story. But basically, the Bata Shoe Company in I think in the 50s. This is like I'm just making this up. The Bata Shoe Museum, the Bata Shoe Company was a large shoe company, international. It still exists, but it's based in Switzerland now. And but previously it was based in Toronto, and the wife of the owner, the head of Bata Shoes, was Mrs. Sonia Bata, and she would travel with her husband and started collecting shoes and started collecting a lot of shoes and got really interested in how shoes told a story about the social history who we are, lots of stories about different cultures. And so she started collecting, and eventually decided to open a museum. And it's located just down from the Royal Ontario Museum. And it focuses on shoe, footwear, shoe history, and there's a huge collection of both Indigenous shoes, collections from different communities all around the world. There's a really fashion collection, and there's also I kind of call it the famous person's shoe collection, but it's I think they call it the persons of note shoe collection.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
every once in a while, something crazy will show up that I have to prep for an exhibition. So last was Imelda Marcos's shoe, kind of caught me off
Oh my
guard.
god.
There's a show I just got recently reviewed that we installed, and it was Imelda Marcos's shoe, and oh god, and now I'm blanking on it. Was an actor, not Bela Lugosi's shoe.
Oh my god.
Not together, not together.
I
They
didn't-
just happened to be in
okay.
the show, and I kind
I
of
did
was
not. I was not
done.
expecting Bella Lugosi.
I know. I wasn't either. I was like, "Whose shoe is this?" I was like, "Oh yeah." And yeah, he has
Oh, that's
really
great.
huge feet.
Yeah,
Huge
it's.
feet.
I can believe that. It's if
It's weird.
if anyone ever wants to
It's great.
go on like
Yeah.
a deep dive rabbit hole, the Bata family and the backstory of them is so interesting. They're one of these huge companies that in the 1950s, like post-war, I guess Sonia's husband perhaps, or his father, or whoever it was in charge at the time, had this idea that he was going to create build a town from scratch and create like this planned community where people would be like cradle to grave Bata workers with like all the amenities and had this like utopian vision for the company, and it was just very, very interesting.
Yeah.
They
didn't tell me about that in the
noise.
interview.
Canadian way to say celebrity. I like it. And Emmanuel, I'm gonna if you want to unmute yourself, put you
That's
in
me.
the hot seat for now.
That's my name.
Hello.
Hi.
And so
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so you were the person who was playing us in, who went over the
Yes.
you were providing us with the tunes.
E major.
Very nice. And you are in fact a composer. Do you want to tell us about that a little bit?
In fact, I'm not sure. In aspiration, certainly. Yeah, I've been a lifelong singer and player of instruments of many kinds. I went to school as a pianist and composer, and a number of years post-graduation, I'm finally taking it very seriously and trying to transition to full-time professional writing work. So that's quite a journey to be going on. I'm also the very proud, loving owner of two beautiful cats.
Yes.
Named Chopin and Laura Dern, who will probably be making mischief at some point. So if you hear any sounds or see anything suddenly fall over, just know that they're responsible. Maybe they'll make a cameo later.
So Primi has a beautiful, relatively newish cat as well. Laura, do you have a cat?
I do. We have two cats, Clementine, and I've locked them out of the basement room now. Clementine and a cat we inherited from the neighbors, who I'll go into the name later, but his official name is Jasper right now.
Very nice.
He's a 12-year-old cat, so we just keep changing his name.
Primi, I enjoy your cat's name. Can you tell us what it is?
My cat is named Fiasco because he's a disaster, but just a little one.
Wonderful.
Oh, and as you mentioned in the chat, a cat named Barbara Streisand. So it's Laura Dern and Barbara Streisand. We have like a.
I love when cats have just like people names. Like when people are like, "This is my cat. His name is Steve." I'm like, "His name is Steve? That's not a cat name." They're like, "It is a cat name. That's him. He's a cat."
Oh, thank goodness, Jared is back. It's
Perfect
quite
timing.
important that we have him around. Anyway, but Emmanuel, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about. When you say you What are your aspirations as a composer? What is the career track for a composer these days? Given that you're not going to be, I don't
Gosh,
know, be like working in the court of the King of Prussia or anything like that. It's
yeah, if only, right? Uh, what's so interesting to discover recently is that uh, one does not simply make a living as a composer doing one thing. So my whatever my career track ultimately ends up being, it will surely involve, some regular writing of library tracks that people can just grab for small commercial projects, and then I would earn royalties off of them. Hopefully, commissions for concert work from specific ensembles. Um, I would love to be doing uh, uh, work for game and film, games especially, because I'm so interested in games as an artistic medium
right,
uh,
right.
of choice.
Jared,
Um,
he's
oh, dear God,
vanished again.
and the challenge of writing music for games is that it has to be designed in a totally different, flexible, mutable way
Yeah,
without
I
a
imagine.
without a particular um, uh, without a fixed start and end point that you experience in a single line, like a piece of concert music or even the score to a film. Um, Music for games must be designed to be totally reactive.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
it's changed based on any situation that the player determines, and I find that so invigorating. Um,
Hmm.
Ultimately, like choice as an element of art music has existed since the 20th century for players, right? You have
Yeah,
uh, scores that are intended to be read by the players in not a predetermined way, but the result is still a linear experience for an
hmm,
audience, right? And ultimately, I don't know how, but I would be very interested in producing works that are interactable by both the players and the listeners simultaneously.
yeah, yeah. That's
Uh,
so interesting because I'm familiar with, I hadn't thought about that because video games are obviously an interactive art form, and then there's been various forays in literature to create interactive forms of creative writing, but I had not thought of interactive music in the sense of being interacted with by an audience and not, yeah, as you say, not just by the
Now,
people
the
performing it.
closest I can imagine at present is sound installation, right? That
Right, right.
that exists in a space that you then
Hmm.
choose to physically navigate, however.
Hmm.
But virtually, I think more possibilities exist, and there are some other things, yet to be found. Um, in the short term, I just want to write a solid portfolio of some tracks that'll give me work.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I'm very interested in choice as a medium in psychology, um, uh, and uh, especially recently, I'm considering it really important to be an ambassador for music in
Hmm.
professional work, right? Um, uh, Music literacy not as is among the weakest of most of the art forms, I think, right now.
Hmm.
Most people can read a film effectively, but for art music and concert music, following a lot of the developments of the 18th and 19th century relied on audiences that knew the rules, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
could understand when they were being twisted and mutated and follow
Right.
the large waypoints of a work. Um, but mostly, I want more people to feel like music is for them.
Right,
Um,
right.
it's such a common thing for me to see and hear people say is like, oh, I could never play an instrument, or like, oh, I'm not good enough, or oh, I don't know enough. do this, and I really want to push back on that as much as possible, and invite people in a really huge way, and remind people that the verb of music is to play.
Right, right.
And I would like to show you how you also can play. I'd like to. We have so many great science communicators, right? Bill
Mhm.
Nye,
Right.
for example.
If I, I
Kaku
think
for
Primi is a
Hmm.
is a
uh,
science
and
communicator as well. I think of
the
her as
best music communicator you can think of,
just yeah. It's hard to
right?
yeah.
And I'd like to. I'd like to think that maybe I can become that person for a lot of people someday.
So speaking of play, I'm just gonna jump in here and we're gonna look at Jared and tracking the. Oh, you did it! You butchered the pumpkin.
Did. It's just as I thought it would be.
Are you? What are your feelings, Jared? Are you traumatized by this?
Well, having internet issues helped in a way, because now I'm just so frustrated with that I'm like, this is less of an issue.
Taking your mind off the distress.
I
Of the
know, but
pumpkin.
like, God, and I've never carved a pumpkin. This is really gross.
I
Reach in with your
know, yeah.
hands.
Yeah, it's really it's very squishy and
I
disgusting and
didn't
cold.
want
And it's much
to.
quicker. Sorry, it is much faster though. It is much faster than trying to get at it with like the spoon.
You mean I have to take all of my jewelry off to reach into
Oh my
the
God.
cavity of a thing that I'm
We're
half
monsters.
convinced feels pain?
You didn't wear
Okay.
any word bracers?
Jess is saying what I was thinking. Are you gonna cook the seeds?
Obviously,
Very
Jessica,
good.
you know I'm gonna save the seeds.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
there's all this stringy stuff. Ugh.
Yeah. So I saw one of those like TikTok hacks that went viral of a very nice like middle-aged Midwestern lady with all these like jack-o'-lantern hacks. And one of them was the best way to clean out the inside of the pumpkin is if you have one of those egg beaters with the detachable beaters, like an old school electric egg beater. You stick it inside, you just like turn it on and move it around a bit. Gets all the goop out. It is also very smelly. Krista suggests using a spoon. A spoon is also, like
Yeah, that's what I was
the
gonna do.
non-hack version.
Believe
Pumpkins
it
are
or not,
invaded by scarlet furies.
if you have a spoon with the right curvature, that's the most helpful I've found.
Yeah.
But, I in college one time carving pumpkin, we got some of those like cheap plastic carving sets or whatever to do, and that flat little plastic scraper, I swear, just went and it was dry.
Sometimes you get an implement that is just like somehow the right size and shape, and it's just an irreplaceable, useful thing in your life. I think the pumpkin is just a vessel. I think he's just gonna bake it.
I'm just gonna cram it full of stuff. This is really upsetting.
So now it's not the time to tell the story about how I got detention in junior high from causing a pumpkin explosion at our jack-o'-lantern.
No, it's
contest.
obviously
the time to tell that story.
So the problem is when you're young and you're a nerd and you're like the kid that all the teachers are like, this is a very well-behaved kid. She never interrupts in class. She always does her homework. If you give her free time, she just reads. So my best friends and I decided to enter the jack-o'-lantern contest, and we made, kind of a scary design on ours, and we put some fake blood on it. And then we were like, what would make this stand out from the rest of the pumpkins? So we went to the science room when our science teacher wasn't there, Mr. Chambers, and borrowed a bunch of magnesium. Probably one little piece would have been enough. Anyway, so we lit it up, and everyone afterwards was like, they got detention because they made their pumpkin explode. It did not explode. It was just a very vigorous combustion reaction inside the pumpkin, and the lid came off, was all.
Blew the lid off your pumpkin.
Yeah, so that was like a month and a half. It took us to like Christmas. It was Yeah, and the cleanup wasn't all that much fun because, of course, it like incinerated the inside of the pumpkin. It was like 1300 degrees or something. Yeah, my defense was like I was 11, so I didn't know any better, and somebody should have stopped us.
That is a remarkable amount of initiative, though, I think, for an 11-year-old. Right? I mean,
We did not win. We literally, yeah, we got yelled at, and they called the fire department, and we didn't win, and we got detention.
That's injustice.
yeah, well, check back in on whoever won that contest, and I bet they don't have a Nebula award.
Yeah, right.
Thank you. That makes me feel better.
I do want to point out, I did a really good job cutting the
It's
top.
beautiful. It's star-shaped.
Yeah. So
Very nice.
I'm clinging to that as I work my way through this.
So just to check in on that for a minute. So what is the next step in this process?
It will be. How much of this okay, so honest question. How much of this actually has to come out? I have no idea.
I mean, it's all edible. It's fine. I think texture-wise, you probably want to get rid of the slime. But if there's fibers remaining that are stubborn, I don't think it makes that much of a difference because it's all going to cook. But it might be like if there's too much of it, it might be kind of unappealingly squishy when you go to eat it.
In my defense, my ancestors should have taught me how to do this, but they didn't because they were too busy assimilating. So that's on them. None of this is my fault.
Lost the generational historical knowledge, like how to get the goop out of a pumpkin. Right.
Also, we never carved jack-o'-lanterns as children, so I never got that either. It's the system. The system has failed me.
You're very gourd deprived. It's just
well, I mean, I kind of hate them anyway, so I don't feel bad about not getting that part. But like knowing how to clean out a pumpkin.
I'm a big fan of squash of all kinds. But
oh, you asked about the next step.
Sorry, right. I did.
You asked about,
what are you stuffing it with?
So I have you know what? I'm done. I don't care anymore. I'm just gonna scrape off the lid a little bit. I have rice. I have, if I had been able to set up my camera to show you my workspace, it would look very nice. I have everything so elegantly laid out, but I have buttered rice, raisins, walnuts, dried apricots, honey, cinnamon. The recipe doesn't call for cardamom, but I'm putting cardamom in because I love cardamom. And it also says you can do whatever you want with the spices. And I thought, my time has come. This is, I hate this. So first of all, I'm going to wash my hands, and then I think what I have to do is kind of put everything into a bowl and like squish it around till it's mixed up, and then just kind of pack it into this thing that I've just violated.
Right. So this is basically a sweet dish, but not very sweet. It's kind of like a rice pudding.
There's like 6 tablespoons of honey in this. It's pretty sweet.
Ah, all right.
Yeah, I was going to ask what's really the end goal here? What's the product?
I mean, you eat it is the end goal.
Maybe this is the pumpkin torch. You can hear the pumpkin being tortured. We can hear its screams, Jared.
I thought so. So now I have to cover the inside with honey, which feels like scoop. Like,
oh wow! So you like actually get in there with your hands and the honey
again.
It's a very tactile. This is a very tactile dish.
Yeah. So coat the inside with honey. Put all the filling together, and then start packing it in. So that's going to be my next little bit of.
Amazing. What as a side note, what did happen to the kitchen cam this episode?
Well, as I frantically messaged you, I got stuck in a coffee shop and couldn't get back in time to set up and test the cam.
I see.
So that's why you can't. But if the people clamor for it, you can watch this.
Whoa.
Gotta smear the honey around in there.
And that looks, is that like buckwheat honey or something? Because it
No,
looks like
it's actually blackberry honey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're getting luxurious here.
Nice.
Okay, so that's pretty
Very
thoroughly. It's
nice.
a little bit crystallized, so it's kind of thick, but whatever.
Yeah. But that's probably makes it easier to actually like get it to stay
Yeah,
where you want
yeah.
it.
So now I'm just gonna mix the other stuff together.
Good. Okay, well, this seems like a good moment to do this. And who shall I pick on now, or shall I chuck a question out to the group? So someone said, where is it? Sorry, I'm scooping. Together are the cats the Streisand effect. I think if you put Fiasco and Barbara Streisand the cat together, then you'd have a minor disaster with Barbara Streisand effect. Maybe is this your? I think this is your first cat, is it not? You are new to the world of
I'm new
ownership.
to the world of owning a cat. I've looked after friends' cats, so I've like cat sat, but that's really kind of more a matter of, you come in and you scoop the box and you feed them and you cuddle them a bit and then you leave. But now there's like this little guy living in my house. It's yeah,
you were calling him local small bastard man on Twitter.
That is that's his non-official name. His paper name at the vet is Fiasco, nice. But his real name is local small bastard man.
It seems like the ticker you would get along the bottom of the screen if he was being interviewed on TV.
Yeah. Okay, and also he just ran into the room and jumped up onto the lower level of his cat shelf. So again,
can we see him, or is he?
If he comes over here, which he might, because he likes to bug people. Yesterday he got a little overexcited at some birds that were in the backyard, and he fell off his cat tree. So I noticed now he's avoiding the top shelf. Like, people told me cats were like elegant and graceful, and I feel like I've been sold a bill of lies. He's a train wreck, and he runs into walls like twice a day. It's a combination of the fluffy toes and having hardwood floors, I think, and like bad spatial perception. Like, he gallops around the house like a pony. I thought cats were supposed to be silent. I don't know.
How old is he?
He was a stray, so they figure based on his teeth, he was about 18 months old. So now he's like 2-ish. I don't know how old that is in like people terms.
I think that's like college age.
I
think he's a college age cat.
Oh my god, that might explain
something. They have energy.
Yeah, he has a lot of energy. I played with him this morning for like 45 minutes in the hopes that he wouldn't like come in here and disrupt stuff and knock stuff over. So,
this is very much a cat welcoming stream. So
Okay, good. So if he does show up, I won't be like, get off the desk.
I'm very much hoping to see at least 1 or 2 cats before the end of the stream. Was there anything other than that? Oh yeah, sorry, Laura.
Mine just tried to break in, but then he ran away because I opened the door. He got all excited.
Of course. So. I mean, if you want them to appear in the stream.
Oh well, if you're going to open the door, I'm not coming in.
Where's the challenge in that?
I have a question for Laura. Actually, do you have a favorite exhibit at the museum? Is there like an exhibit you like best?
Oh, well, I have a. There are a couple of there's 3 rotating exhibits, and then there's sort of one that is all about shoes. So it's sort of a timeline of shoes.
Oh, Jared, you missed this. Sorry, I have to break in and tell Jared that Laura is working at the Badass Shoe Museum in Toronto, which is a museum that is all about shoes. I was thinking you need to be you need to be informed about this. Sorry, Laura, go on.
No, it's okay. So I'm going to change the question slightly in that I get to go into storage because it's part of my job, and when I go into storage, because I'm still learning the collection, I've only been there for about 3 months. I kind of try and pick. I have to go in and I have to check just on things, and I check the temperature and the humidity, because that's something we worry about as conservators. We want it to be really stable to take care of the collection. I can bore everyone more with that if you'd like in a minute, but I go in, and when I'm in there, I walk around a bit and decide what's going to be my favorite shoe of the day or of the week. And it's kind of been stuck for a long time. For a while, it was a pair of, we also have skates, like anything that goes on a foot. So we have stockings and skates and snowshoes and anything. But we had skates, and so there was a pair of beautiful blue suede skates from the 50s that I thought were really nice and charming. But then I discovered in the shelf, it's a boot that I used to own when I was a 10-year-old, and it's Bata Shoes made it, and a company still makes them. They're called the Cougar boot. I don't know. They're like a pillowy,
Yeah.
beige pleather boot with a weird toe and like a red tongue. And so I used to have those when I was about 10. So there's only one. We just have a single of it. And so I go and I visit my Cougar boot, and that's my favorite one right now. So it doesn't really answer your question, but it's kind of does.
No, it does. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I remember going to Bata shoe stores when I was a kid, and I always kind of wondered what happened to them. They had an enormous one in West Edmonton Mall, and when it closed, I was like, "Aw."
Yeah, they still exist. They're just not based in. They just don't have any retail stores in Canada. And
Really?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they still make, because I was looking it up because people ask me, and I'm still learning the company history. But the company, I believe, and I might be wrong, so don't quote me on it. But I think they still make some shoes that are sold at Canadian stores, but they don't have like the Bata shoe store anymore.
Right.
And but the weird story is that I have a friend in Australia, and he was going around telling everybody, Laura's going to be working at the Bata Shoe Museum. And in Australia, they have Bata shoes, but they're big. What their focus was in Australia is primarily shoes for school kids for their school uniforms. And they made one called the Bata Scout, which had a compass in the heel and then little kangaroo prints on the soles, so you could like sneak around stealthily with your Bata shoe as a kid in the outback.
That's amazing.
I don't know. So everyone, when he told them this, were horrified and said, like, they thought Bata Shoes was an Australian company, and they were all wondering why an Australian shoe company had a big museum in Toronto that I was working.
That's really funny. Wow.
That's a long story. Sorry.
Laura, can I just ask you? Actually, this is I think this is the question we all want an answer to. So I'll just cut to the chase. Have you ever worked in your career on an artifact that was haunted or cursed?
It's haunted or cursed. Well, I
on Heimlich, gave you the creeps, moved around weirdly in the room when you weren't looking.
I've heard of haunted artifacts, but I've not personally experienced any. I've heard of ones that I've heard a tale about an artifact that the conservator felt that it had. I can't remember enough of the story to tell a really good version of it, but basically that it threw itself off of the truck when it was being sent out of. She felt it did not want to leave the museum, and it was on a truck getting ready to go on a traveling exhibition, and it just like somehow fell off or flew out of the truck. And I mean, I can't even say what this was, because we're not supposed to talk about these things where bad things happen to artifacts. It wasn't harmed, but she felt that this thing did not want to leave.
Wow.
Yeah, I've not personally. I've had artifacts that just kind of
creep you out,
but just because of the way, I have worked on hair wreaths before.
And
a hair wreath.
Yeah.
So hair wreath is the Victorian. They collected hair of their loved ones. There was a whole hair trade, but the wreaths were usually collected hair from their loved ones, and then they would make these really elaborate arrangements, and they would weave, and they would crimp, and they would make these into sort of these elaborate wreaths with flowers in them. And they're kind of they're not supposed to be creepy. They're supposed to be mementos of love and memory, and but you kind of get a visceral reaction to it a little bit. But the thing that really I actually did have a visceral reaction to once when I was photographing. I didn't have to treat it or anything, but I had to prepare it for display, and I think I can talk about it in that it wasn't it's from a different job, but it was purported to be a lock of Laura Secor's hair,
Mhm.
and it's not from where I currently work, but it kind of just looked like it's just a lock of hair, and it just sort of I really can't stand hair if it's not like attached, and it kind of just felt like something you'd pulled out of a drain. It was just disgusting. It was, I mean, it was lovely, but it was really visceral. Like I just had this moment where I sort of felt, you know. But sometimes,
like
I've worked on. So again, not haunted, and maybe
No.
not Laura Secor's hair. So I shouldn't talk.
Do you want to briefly explain?
Care of Laura Secor's hair, like it's,
Actually,
yeah.
I'm very curious about this. The Americans on the
Well,
stream,
can
do
I-
you know who Laura Secret is?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
From Hark a Vagrant, yes. Can I just update really fast?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
I'm
I have-
talking, yeah. What's?
No,
Oh
it's
my
fine.
God.
I have disemboweled the pumpkin. I have
Yes,
stuffed the
yes.
pumpkin, and now I
Very
have greased its outside with a bunch of butter. So I'm just gonna shove it in the oven now, and
How long does it have to be in there for?
an hour.
Yeah, that seems right.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to interject here that there's a song, there's a Armenian song about this dish, and in the song the singer says that he is baking I forget how to pronounce it now. Ghapama?
Ghapama. It's kind of
Ghapama.
like the French R, like.
Right. Or the Dutch
Ghapama.
It's kind of a little bit. Ghapama in the oven, and the smell was so delicious that 100 people came to his house, and he only had one pumpkin. So
Well, I hope that doesn't happen this
Like
time.
Ghapama brings all the boys to the yard.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Literally. Sorry. But okay, so yes, Laura Secor. Jared has read Hark a Vagrant, so he knows who Laura
Yeah.
Secret is.
I do not, so please feel free to educate me along with any viewers.
Like a quick potted explanation. Laura, you're muted right now. There we go.
No, I know, but can you? I actually, that's the problem. Is I don't have great stories. Can you describe who Laura Secord is? Because I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to get it wrong.
You know what? My knowledge is this is one of those things I learned about in grade 8 history, and now I've forgotten. But she's kind of Canada's answer to Paul Revere, in that she was like a housewife who overheard American soldiers talking, like during the American invasion of Canada. She overheard American soldiers talking about their strategy and what their next moves were, and walked over the countryside and through the forest with her cow for like 2 hours or something to get to a general who she could then tell, and that allowed us to win a war. So that is the end. I mean, I think most Canadians, when you say Laura Secret, there is a confectionery company in Canada named after her. That's sort of like where her name comes up most often.
Does it feature the cow in the logo?
Sadly, you would think.
I really want to focus in on this cow.
The idea was that, like, if anyone stopped her, she'd be like, "Just gotta take this cow to. I've sold my cow. Just walking my cow." Because
I thought maybe there was like, she had a tear-felt scene of not wanting to leave the cow behind. They had a years-long friendship.
The cow was her trusted advisor.
The cow warned her against danger as she on her trek. I just love that that's part of the mythology.
It is.
I now feel like I was speaking ill of Laura Secord. I don't know for sure that it's her hair.
So. I was just going to say that
could it be the cow's hair?
Or horsehair. Yeah. There's something deeply creepy about disembodied hair that is sort of like, it's almost like a body part, like, although it isn't quite. There's just something a little unsettling about it. I have an art piece in my apartment made out of human hair, and my mom has a friend who's a sculptor who works with hair. So, and it's a little bit. It's like, what is this? Oh, Yes. A guardian cow.
So if the pumpkin's in the oven, what's Jared messing with there?
Oh, so there's as I understand it, there's a second dish because that one was just like kind of set it and forget it, and so he's making something else. Jared, do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yes, I was just running a food processor, so I was not going to speak for a bit.
Okay. Do you want to?
Yeah, so because the pumpkin's gonna be baking for an hour, and I feel like it's not super interesting to watch, I am going to be making mamoul, which are little nut-filled cookies. They're a little bit like pastries. So it's got a filling of walnuts and sugar and cinnamon, and a sort of pastry outside made with ghee. And then you make a little ball of the pastry, you put the filling in it, you kind of roll it around, you'll make a little dumpling, and then you mash it into this mold
Look at that.
to shape it, and then I guess you hit it to make it come out. I don't know. This is a journey we're all gonna go on together.
Let us get a good look at that mold.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
They end up looking a little bit like mooncakes.
Yeah. That's really pretty.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So this was a last second decision. Like,
So you've made these
Thursday.
before, or is this another
No.
case where your ancestors have abandoned you?
it's another case of my ancestors abandoning me. I have made a similar thing that wasn't molded, so I'm familiar with the theory, but we'll see. We'll see how this goes.
These sound delicious. I'm looking
They
forward to
do.
how they turn out.
They do.
All right. And so that you were saying you might have to mute yourself occasionally because this process is noisy and involves banging and machines and
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how loud that actually ends up being, but I imagine a loud smack every 5 minutes or whatever is going to be pretty irritating.
I do wanna see that happen though.
Oh, well, you will.
You could sort of announce it for us like a ritual, like, all right,
Yeah.
here comes the mold.
Oh man. Okay, so can I ask this is just thinking about something that Emmanuel mentioned earlier. I think everyone on this stream is trying to do creative stuff and also trying to like make a living and not starve. And I'm always interested in hearing about how people do that, what your thoughts are, what's worked for you, what hasn't. So anyone wanna jump in on that? Preview, you're nodding like you know those feels.
So this also relates back to when I adopted the cat. So I picked him up, and it's like, okay, you can have a couple of weeks to like settle in, but then you really have to start looking for a job because cat food isn't free, litter isn't free. I expect you to be employed pretty soon. Like I would say by the end of the summer, I would expect you to have a job and be contributing to household expenses.
He is a college age cat, as we have established.
Yeah.
So,
Anyways, every day I come home and I'm like, so how's the job hunt? And he's like, I'm still working on my portfolio. I still have some more pieces that I need to like scan and put in there. So basically there's an unemployed artist living in my house now, which is great. Yeah, no, I have a full-time job that is most weeks slightly more than full-time. Like my actual real job that I went to school for. It's like 40 to 60 hours a week, plus commute 2 days a week. And I like my job generally most of the time. I work
You're a
in
scientist.
environmental regulation. Yeah, I'm in a group with 4 other scientists. We're trying to write environmental policy for Alberta, which probably the less said about that, the better. And every day is an adventure in this province. But yeah, it doesn't leave a ton of time during the week to run a house and buy groceries and cook and do laundry and clean and occasionally shower and sleep and keep the cat from destroying every soft item I own, because if you don't play with him enough, he gets bored. And also occasionally, I don't know, like see friends or do something fun, or it's
one of
really,
those
really
lives that
tiring.
people talk about.
One of those lives that people talk about. So I know I've talked about this on social media a bit, but I'm kind of getting to the point where it's like, if something's got to give, it's going to have to be my writing, because that's one of the few things in my life that well, let's say publishing, not writing. I'll still probably be
Hmm.
writing, but publishing is going to have to go because that's the thing with deadlines that pays me a little better than pocket change. So if it's a choice between, killing myself to finish a book for $5,000 or actually like showering and brushing my teeth now and then, occasionally, that's going to have to go. So I guess the answer to how am I coping with this is not terribly well at the moment.
Oh
I also have
man.
a couple of like irritating chronic health conditions, and I recently got COVID, and it made all of those worse.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I don't think I saw that coming, even though everyone warned me about it. So I've got a heart condition, I've got asthma, and
Hmm.
now my energy level is like that. And now I'm like, well, this is even less of an argument to keep knocking myself out to produce novels that pay nothing. So I'm gonna have to have a very, very boring, awkward chat with my agent at some point.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's rough. That's yeah.
I
It's
hope other people are better at the whole work-life balance thing. I'd like to hear how other people are managing.
yeah. I mean, for myself, I can say I recently, like this year, I've sort of previously in my life got by doing things like being a grad student and being a freelance editor and writer, and working for nonprofits that were not full time. Basically, avoiding being full time at anything because I'm not very good at it, and I'm not great at. I realize it's not even that I'm bad at organizing my time. I'm bad at organizing my energy because I'll just like run out of steam and fall asleep. It's just. So yeah, so I have a 9-to-5 job this year, and I actually really like my workplace. The people I work with are super nice, and the work-life balance is good and all that stuff. I feel like I can't really complain, but I'm also like, how do people do this? I don't understand. What is this 9-to-5 thing? Like, what are you supposed to do things other than work? Like, I'm so baffled by this. So I'm trying to so there haven't been as many kitchen parties or any of the other things I used to organize in my time, because I don't have time. Just, anyway, Laura, what are you?
Well, I think when I decided to go back to school, somebody warned me. They said, if you go back to somebody else who used to make art and who had a fine arts background, and they said, if you do this, you're never going to make art again. I was like, oh yeah, that's ridiculous. And in some ways, I haven't actually, but it's and I keep meaning to kind of go back into it. And what I find is that sometimes just my work gives me some of the things that making art did. So so it doesn't feel that weird, and it's nice. It's nice because I can have a 9-to-5 job, and I sometimes will take on smaller projects. I got really interested in wax conservation and wax, and because it's a material I used in my artwork, and so I sort of focused on that as kind of it was part of my work, but I was doing it outside of work. So in some ways it felt like I was making art again, even though I was trying to write a paper about a wax mannequin we had in the collection. So so for me, it's feeling like it's kind of filling in some of that stuff that I really like.
Yeah.
And I'm not, but I miss it, and I experience, I still have a domain name just so that I can set up a website if I want.
Right.
For my artwork, which I haven't made in a long time. So I don't know. I haven't. It comes and goes, and then I changed jobs recently, so that just took up all of the energy and the pandemic, right? So we'll see.
It's there's been a lot of like wild cards. Oh yeah, we got a mortar and pestle happening here. Actually,
oh my god, I feel badly we didn't see the rice going into the pumpkin.
I mean, I had the camera sort of on it, so if anybody was looking at my little screen, they were seeing it. What I'm doing now is for the dough. check on the thing on the stove. Is I'm grinding up malab, which is the pit of a sour cherry, and
Ooh.
it's very typically Armenian. The
Mm.
recipe doesn't call for it, but I figured I might as well put it in. Like, I'd rather have it in there than not.
What does it taste like?
It's very hard to describe.
Hmm.
It's a little bit almondy. It's a little bit almost like old book kind of smell.
Amazing.
It to me, it never tastes the same way twice, so it's hard to
Huh.
describe it. It always tastes very familiar. It always tastes like something else that you've had, but you still can't identify what that thing was.
Right. Can't quite put your finger on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a bizarre flavor. But
Oh, nice.
hey, why not put it in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing, and that's why I muted. Because
Can we see that? Could you hold up the mortar and pestle so we can see? Is that like is it ceramic or what is it?
It is stone. I forget. Yeah, it's like marble or like black marble.
Okay. Oh wow. That's the kind of mortar and pestle I would expect you to have.
Yeah,
it's very on
right.
brand.
So I meant to show what it looks like before it gets ground up, but it just looks like little tiny cherry pits.
Okay. And are you grinding it up with like the cardamom and the other, or are there other? Sorry, the cardamom was.
The cardamom was the other
rice.
thing, although I think
Yeah.
I put a little bit in the filling anyway, because I can do what I want.
It's your cookie.
No, I'm grinding it with just a little bit of salt to help break it down.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's an interesting. It's a good trick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just gonna mute again because I'm.
Emmanuel, on the topic of trying to have a life and do your art and also pay your rent.
Yeah, yeah.
What's
So
what's your situation?
I've been at my current place of work for a little over 6 years now, actually. So I have climbed up or failed upward, as the case may be, as a person there with a lot of systems knowledge, a person with a lot. I somehow became the Excel expert of the crew, so I'm valuable over there, and I'm in a position where, I am able to withhold some energy from that job, make enough money to pay the rent and eat and take care of things generally, have a little bit of a savings account, sort of, one day. And I know that I will never be satisfied continuing to do life this way. I have a lot of experience with. I have a long history of some mental health struggles, and as a musician, actually, it's a matter of my personal well-being that I be making music.
Right.
If I haven't played or sung or written something in a few days, I will start to get ill, or worsen, anything that I'm already going through. So I'm in this position right now where I'm so grateful to have the stability that I have as it's something to start building a musical foundation of work over here, next to it, that I can eventually hop onto. And I'm also, sometimes when I'm like, I don't have enough time to do this, I'm not good enough at anything, I need to quit. There's also like a very visceral knowledge that quitting music is never going to be an option for me. I have to be doing it. Um,
Mhm.
and in the last year and a half or so, really taking that as true, and uh, organizing my time and my energy around music making solely for the purpose of maintaining my sanity,
Hmm.
has been really effective. Um, uh, I'm not really sure how to finish that tale, but like everything is in flux and in
Mhm.
progress right now. We have no idea where anything will end up,
Right.
much like what we're hearing.
I like the idea you said earlier that you need to be sort of it's helpful for you, like, for your brain, for you to be, like, playing on the keyboard while we're talking sometimes because it's something,
Yeah,
like, you wanna be doing with your hands.
physically. Well, yeah, but when I'm muted, sometimes I'm physically, doing a little something over
Uh-huh.
here, just because like it uh, uh, but it's the keyboard, I suppose, is comforting and familiar, and um, I find that uh, music making and selecting the right word for a sentence are overlap so much that
Hmm.
uh, I won't necessarily be able to speak for a little while if I'm deeply involved in selecting sounds. And similarly, in this moment, right, I'm finding myself, playing some harmonies in replacement for where I would normally finish a sentence if I can't quite get there. So that's kind of interesting.
Oh, that
But
is
yeah,
interesting.
it's my uh, I have no idea what my career path looks like, and
Hmm.
where the next milestone is. And I have no choice but to just keep doing stuff. And that's a really strange place to be.
I think it's yeah, I mean, this is the other thing is that the structures of, like, the economics of the arts have changed so much even within our lifetimes and are so totally in flux that it seems like it feels like it's impossible to create any kind of long-term plan. I feel like as a Canadian, I it's almost an advantage that I've grown up not expecting to make any kind of money off of. Of like if there's money in doing art, it's getting grants and getting residencies and stuff like that. It's not out of people buying your art. I remember like a few years ago when Michael Redhill, the novelist, won the Giller Prize. I think it was the Giller Prize for Bellevue Square, and when he accepted it, he was and it was a story in the Globe and Mail that he had like $8 left in his bank account. He was like, "Great, I can pay my rent now." And this was like the biggest novel in Canada that year, but just there's just no money in Canadian publishing. It just like isn't there. So you kind of have to, yeah, you have to think of like find ways around that. I was also thinking, sorry, Emmanuel, when you were talking about the noodling, I used to, years and years ago, I used to go to something in Toronto called the Toronto Comic Jam, which was a monthly get together of people who like to draw comics. And there were a lot of people there who kind of had like that same, like, deep brain based need to draw, and you'd be talking to them over a beer, and like as you talk to them their hand would be doodling and like drawing really elaborate pictures, and it was kind of like I was always struck by how there was this like clearly connection to the brain and the hand that they had that was so like like bypassing their conscious mind in a way. Like they just had to keep doodling all the time. I feel like Jared has a little bit of that, but that compulsion to be creating. Yeah, it's not. it's part of it's part of how you function in the world. It's not something that
Yeah,
you
I
can
think part of the point
necessarily.
I was needing to make there was the transition in the way that I see myself from this is a compulsion to this is an actual need, right? That
Mhm.
I'm incomplete without doing this on a regular basis,
Mhm.
and really
Mhm. Yeah.
respecting that in a new way. Yeah. I forget if you mentioned something about uh, uh, the internet just then, or
I mean, that's part of the
career tools
whole, like,
changing within our
why.
lifetime.
Yeah, yeah.
But and one thing that gives me some optimism is, even if I am for the moment trapped in the United States, which has no real um, uh, as a culture on the whole, uh, enthusiasm for the arts. Um, I live in a time when, if I'm looking to do film or game work, like these studios across the world can find me and I can find them, and I could put,
Hmm.
if somebody,
Right.
if some like the games industry in Poland is actually really vibrant and thriving,
Huh.
and Polish is actually one of my languages of study
Oh,
that
good.
I'm very interested in. But just to know that if I produce something, interesting or value, it's I'm not making music solely for a United States audience, right? That whoever's going to find me and really be interested in what I can do could come from really anywhere, and I could live anywhere and have a career theoretically.
Hmm.
That's even if it doesn't exist right now, for me, that thought is pretty comforting, I find.
What you're doing, I mean, in a way, the music composing is more portable than writing, because I can only write in English, and I don't know about
Hmm.
anyone else here. Like, I'm pretty much limited, but I would be limited to English speaking countries if I was looking at moving somewhere else. Even as an editor and copywriter, which is what I was doing for a living before. But yeah, music, music, the universal language. You could be like just as well doing it in Poland or wherever. So that's cool. How many languages do you speak, Emmanuel?
Well, fluently. I'm a native English speaker. I studied Japanese pretty heavily
Hmm.
during my college years. Uh, I went full immersion, actually, like
Huh.
no English language music or TV shows, um, that sort of thing. Ultimately, my skill, I got about to what's called the N3 level, which is about, like, you can read a newspaper.
Hmm.
Um, but the skill has atrophied quite a bit
Hmm.
because I was surrounded by a community of speakers, really, of any kind. Um, so that's unfortunate. More recently, I've picked up um, Polish because I fell in love with the sound originally. Um, uh, it's it's like it's the beautiful child of French and Russian in terms of its vowels and consonant clusters. You have words like księżyc, which is the moon.
Huh.
They're just really, it's just so tasty.
Hmm.
And I find it grammatically really interesting. Right? I
Hmm.
like um, I like linguistics.
I do this periodically. Look at what Jared is mixing up
Yeah.
over here.
This is the pastry for the mamu.
Is it buttery?
There is so much ghee in it.
What else is in it?
Well, flour, obviously,
Mhm.
malab, milk, sugar, egg.
Okay.
The goal is to have something moldable.
I was gonna say, because it's not very leavened, is it? Because it's not gonna rise very much, so that it
No, there's a
maintains its
little bit
shape.
of baking soda in it, but that's not going to
Mm.
do much beyond make it a little more like probably the casing of like a fig Newton.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. You know what? I haven't had. I don't. I'm gonna open this up to actually everyone, because I want to know if the American experience is different. I have not had a fig Newton in ages. I went and looked for them, and they've quietly vanished. I don't even know if they make them anymore. I miss
I
them.
would pay you so much for a thing of figurines right now. I've been
There's
missing them too.
They're still around.
Did they
I
just
don't
Just trying
disappear
to
in
think of the
Canada?
last time I had one.
Yeah, but
Like
I don't see them in
years
you
ago.
don't see them in stores anywhere, right? Like if you
No.
I don't think I have.
if you shopped online for your grocery delivery or whatever, you could probably grab it. But like
Yeah.
in person, it's just like where like you really don't see them anymore.
I just got some a couple months ago. Maybe you're just.
I've looked
Well,
for
I
them in
mean, I
stores
also
here.
haven't gone to a store in approximately 2.5 years. As much as can be avoided anyway. Yeah.
Hmm. I mean, you can still see them. Like, I've looked for them here, and it's like you Google them and they come up on like Amazon.ca, and it's like, okay, if you want to order a case off Amazon.ca, you can get them. But I don't see them in like the Loblaws or whatever. This is like a Canadian side grocery issue. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the great Fig Newton shortage of the 2020s is all about. But I just haven't seen them for a long time. So if there are people watching us. There's like maybe a dozen people as far as I can tell. If anyone wants to pop a question into the chat, I can see the Twitch chat. For any of our for Jared on what he's clicking up, or for any of our guests, feel free. If there's any burning questions that you have. I want to ask Preeby, so why the end of the world and the end of all things in cosmic horror? Why don't we just go there?
Good question. Yeah, let's just go there. Yeah, I'm not actually an obsessed eschatologist, I swear. I just
I find it really funny how many horror people I've now met, like a fair number of horror people, and you're all like really upbeat in your presentation, basically. Like you're just
people think and I don't know that I realized that until I got into publishing, but like all the horror people are like these soft, squishy marshmallow people that are like the sweetest, nicest people you'll ever meet. And then all the lit pick people are serial killers. I don't know. Like I don't know that I thought necessarily it was going to be the other way around, but every horror author I've ever met is like the loveliest person. Me excluded. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I wanted to write about the end of the world as kind of being like the biggest possible stakes for someone in a story. I guess I just thought it fun to explore the idea that, well, if I was involved in one of these adventure stories, like the kinds that I write for like the Void trilogy or whatever, I would just nope out. I would leave because it all sounds scary and terrible. But if someone told me you have to stay involved in this plot or the world is going to end, I would probably stay put. And I guess it's partly a question of character too. So it's fun to explore in fiction because, whereas in the real world what we're looking at is people going, well, can we do anything about disastrous world-changing climate events that are already killing thousands of people across the world and displacing millions and destroying their livelihoods. And that's been happening for a couple of decades. And humanity's response so far has been like, no, I'm just going to let that all happen.
On that note,
Yeah.
look how pretty this is.
I noticed that happening in the background, and I didn't want to break in, but I did want to
It's
see
so
it.
nice. It does
Okay,
look
back
like
to the end of the world.
At least we'll have cookies at the end of the world.
I mean, I can really quickly like show how it's formed if
Oh,
you want
yeah,
to
you
keep
should do
talking
that
in the
again.
background or something. I don't know, but like.
No, you should do that again.
Like,
I'm interested.
Oh yeah.
So this, I didn't pack it quite as tightly into the mold as I should have, but you basically take a little bit of dough. It's very crumbly, which I think is good because that means it won't be tough when it's baked. Kind of squish it into a ball. It resists it. If it were too soft, that would be a problem because it would mean all of the fat was coming out, and you need the fat to stay relatively solid until it's baking because that will make it light.
Right.
Grab I've got to get something that's not a fork for this, but grab a bit of the filling, which is pretty sticky actually. I haven't quite nailed this motion yet, but like
Right.
you kind of pinch the pastry around the filling, make sure there's none
Mhm.
peeking out. Pick up the the paddle and kind of mash it in. And then this is why I was muted. You gotta,
There you
and
go.
there it goes.
Huh. Can we see it? Can we see?
Yeah.
Amazing.
So
These
you really shouldn't be able to. I forgot you had a keyboard. You really shouldn't be able to see the filling peeking out like that, but you know,
yeah.
it's a
Eh,
matter of practice. It is what
Yes.
it is. So I'm
Is
just
the
going to sit
mold
here and keep doing this for a bit.
Yeah, yeah. I feel
is,
like
is
this is a
the
good
mold,
thing to
like
figure out.
buttered or floured or anything, or is
What?
it like
Oh, yeah.
is the mold like floured or anything, or
No,
do you?
there is so much ghee in this that it's
Oh, okay,
basically
it just comes right
self-greasing.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure if I let it sit in there, it'd be a problem, but you just mash it in and then slam it out. So, as the actress said
As
to the
as
bishop.
one does.
Now
Yeah.
we have Rebecca is cooking dumplings in the background. So there's a stuffing things into other small things thing going on here. It seems like they are pretty. It seems like these are something that are it's good to know how to make. It's good to be learning how to make these because if they work out, they'll be something that will be good to make for the holidays, I would think.
Yeah. Oh, they are. I forgot to say they are traditionally made all over West Asia for like if you're Muslim for Ramadan, the end of Ramadan, or I think in Armenia they make them around Easter, if I'm
Hmm.
remembering correctly. But it's very much a celebration food because of all the
Hmm.
labor that goes into making it.
Yeah, yeah. You're not going to do that every week.
No,
So
no. Well, really quickly, this feels like the kind of thing that you would get an assembly line kind of thing going on. Maybe a bunch of
yeah,
little
yeah.
old grannies making it at once or
Yes.
something.
Yeah, that would be a fun thing to do. Like
Like a
have a
brownie
table full of people.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Okay, so back to the end of the world.
yeah.
I don't know. It's also funny too to discuss with people, especially in genre fiction, what we mean when we say the end of the world. I
Hmm.
mean, some people are talking about the end of their technological electricity and fossil fuel based lifestyle,
Yeah.
which to ginormous parts of the world, lots of populations, probably most of my ancestors currently living in India, probably a bunch currently living in South America, um, are going to look around and say, so what?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh no, you don't have a smartphone anymore? Wow, I live on less than $2 a year. I feel so sorry for you. But that's what some people do mean when they say the end of the world. They mean the end of me being able to go pick up a thing of fig Newtons at the grocery store. And some people mean, the planet is going to be slurped into a micro supermassive black hole at the end of the book. That's the end of a world. Yeah. But it
Oh,
does bring
speaking
up
of
questions about like dystopias and utopias, I think,
yeah.
because, when we're like, oh no, I'll have to live in a turf hut and I won't have running water and I'll have to go to the bathroom outside and I'll have to grow my own food and kill animals to subsist. And again, there's huge populations in the world that are going to be like,
And
pretty good. At least you've got a turf hut and aren't living in a slum in Mumbai. I feel so sorry for you. I don't know.
so you and I forget the name of the novel now, but the one that I read of yours was about that like people living in that situation where the world had ended and now they're living in the bombed out remains of the University of Edmonton, I think it was.
Oh, it's not bombed out. It's just
Okay.
post-climate disasters. So I don't
Yes.
know. That's the annual migration of clouds. Yeah, they're living at the university. There's big, sturdy, brutalist buildings. If you're going to continue having climate disasters like floods and wildfires and storms and droughts and things like that, you may as well be somewhere sturdy. And because a lot of that technological based capacity has collapsed, and shipping's collapsed, and the energy society things has basically collapsed. They're living in structures that they now cannot build themselves. They can't reproduce that. They can't make concrete. They can't
Mhm.
make bricks. There's no wood to burn. There's no coal to burn. They're basically living at this point by mining out the landfill and kind of being like, it would have been nice if the people before us had kind of left us a nicer world because they knew this was going to happen and they didn't stop what they were doing to prevent it from happening. On the other hand, they left us all this great stuff in the landfill. All this plastic didn't break down, so we've still got stuff to burn. Thanks, I guess.
That reminds. So I know how annoying this question can be. So I'm sorry in advance. But that kind of reminds me of John Crowley's novel Engine Summer. Have you
Okay.
read that?
No, but I did just recently read another John Crowley novel, and I'm trying to pick up all his stuff now because I've decided I like him.
Oh God, he's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
Engine Summer is. It's not.
Yeah.
There aren't that many similarities. I swear.
Yeah, yeah.
The idea
No,
of
but
living
I'm
on.
definitely going to read it now. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's it's post collapse.
Yeah.
Like it's the end of a world, not end of the
Yeah.
world kind of thing. And it's not climate change. It's a very different kind of thing.
Mhm.
But there is this similar relationship to the remains of an older society where
Mhm.
there are people who just go scavenging and
Yeah.
come up with items that the people in the story don't recognize, obviously, and you the reader do.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and that's what I love about books like that, like A Can't Go for Leibovitz, or like Ridley Walker,
yeah.
or like I don't know, even some of the stuff where it's like, oh, it's a fantasy, oh, it turns out it's a sci-fi, or like Planet of the Apes or whatever. You're running across a world that has ended, and you're living in the world of the present,
Mhm.
and you're like, well, how am I supposed to reconcile this? Maybe someone should write a novel about it. I don't know.
Did Nadia
Oh,
die?
Nadia.
Did we? Oh my God, her world ended.
Yeah. Oh no.
What do we do if Nadia goes away?
Starting in Toronto and it's coming this way.
Wow.
I'm really interested,
Hmm.
for me, in digging into this a little more philosophically for a moment, because Nadia, forgive me, I'm not familiar with your work. I haven't read your work.
Oh yeah.
Nadia characterized it as cosmic horror, and
Some of it is, yeah.
To me, horror is a lot about dread and despair and not having a solution, not having an
Mhm.
answer to.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a lot of your stories are, at a core, quite optimistic, right? They are about living and finding solutions.
I think so.
Tell me more about
Yeah,
that intersection.
but thank you for bringing that up actually, because this is a conversation we've had before, specifically about clouds, because the marketing department put hope punk in the description, and I was like, I don't know what that is, so people are asking me about it in interviews, so I better figure it out. So I had to do some reading. But I was like, this doesn't seem hopeful to me. Everything does collapse. Everybody's sick. A lot of people are disabled. They're living in this very small area. There's 30 to 50 feral hogs. And what the hopeful part meant was kind of, yeah, but like humanity kind of hit and bounced. We're rebuilding. It's not like freaking Threads or whatever. Like, there's people writing novels. They're still teaching the kids how to read. People share, and there's a very strong sense of community, and I think that's the way it goes after that first initial kind of post-apocalyptic panic, and maybe that is hopeful. And yeah, I have had also people like, so my trilogy, so Beneath the Rising, A Broken Darkness, and The Void Ascendant is probably unequivocally cosmic horror. There's certainly a lot of cosmic horror elements and tropes in it, but I've also had people tell me that other books I've written, like Clouds and even Offer, are also horror, and I'm like, I'm not writing horror. Like, that's Clouds is sci-fi, and so is Offer, actually. Like, it's just your regular future dystopia, but I guess I'm not the one who gets to say what's horror or not.
I think people tend to view something that is horror as anything that they find upsetting. Not everybody across the board thinks that, but like if something is maybe existentially kind of terrifying, like Clouds, even if it is more or less hopeful, people might be like, "Oh, well, that is horror," because I haven't read it because I find climate change so upsetting. Like to me, it feels like it would be horror, but I know it's not technically.
Yeah, well, and what I keep referring to it as in interviews is post-apocalypse. Everything is very quiet now. It's like 70 years after everything kind of fell apart, and but yeah, some people are like, I did find this upsetting, and I did find it horror, and it you could have warned me. I'm like, but
Did you look at the back cover? Because it says.
I think there's something
a
here
nice
about
book. I
people
don't know.
finding more horror in the setting than in the narrative,
That is a good
and not really disentangling those.
Not really disentangling that. They're like, this is horrifying for me because this could be my future. And I'm like, is that so bad though? Like, you don't have Wi-Fi, but you've got a warm place to sleep. You've got your family, you've got your friends, you've got some chickens. They have ridiculous names. Like, it's a smaller life and it's a different life, but it's not a terrible, monstrous, awful threads life.
What you're describing as horror is life for probably the majority of people on this planet. So like
yeah. Well, and this is the conversation we keep having in these panels that I get invited to about solar punk and climate fiction. Is like, if we do want to turn the battleship and prevent further climate disasters from happening, everyone's lives are going to have to change. And they're going to have to get different, and they are going to have to get smaller. And some people are really frightened and scared by that rather than kind of looking at it as my life will be different. They're looking at it as my life will be ruined, kind of.
Yeah. Well, it's really, I think people don't understand that the choice isn't, keep the life that you have now or change. It's, do you want to control the change? Then you have to start now.
Yeah.
Either that or it's just going to happen
like,
to you.
The options are going to be taken from us at some point. So our other choice is, can we make some of these options something now while we still have a choice? And this is not just me as a fiction writer, but this is also me working in environmental regulation and being extremely aware of what's probably going to change in the next 10, 15 years, while we still have a chance, and what probably isn't going to change. I have lots of thoughts on that, but I'll probably get fired. Anyway, somebody else talk.
Oh yeah, Primi, I haven't really asked you about your job because I'm just assuming that you can't really talk about it very much, but that's an interesting other perspective to have, I bet. It's giving yourself an existential crisis. Oh my goodness.
That's one reason I will oh God, I wish I could talk about some of this stuff in public. But some things that I tend to work on are like post-apocalyptic, where something terrible has happened, but it's so far in the past that it's almost mythology. People are still dealing with it. But the key for me is that it's not reality. It's always removed, so I can manage the horror for myself in that regard and not have to face it head on the way I probably should be. But also, I mean, artist therapy, but yeah, I'm really interested in that kind of relationship to the end that is not the end is happening, but the end wasn't actually the end.
Yeah.
The way people make meaning out of the end of something is very, very interesting to me, as like growing up Pentecostal, looking for the end of the world every 5 minutes. It's
every 5 minutes.
Well, you don't know the day or the hour.
That's what the Pentagon is.
It was a little bit like you walk into like you walk into a room where you expect there to be people and there's no people. Your first thought is like, "Oh my God, the rapture happened and I've been left behind." So oh wow. And having moved on from that mindset, it's still very, very hardwired into me is how you think about apocalypse and how that changes over the lifespan of even the idea of apocalypse, where the church that I grew up in is currently very into rapture's coming, everybody's gonna, we're all gonna get to go. The bad people, who is almost everybody else, are gonna stay here and be tortured by scorpion demons. Yeah, like all of you. Have fun with that. But this same church, 100 years ago at its founding, believed that the end of the world was something that humanity would have a part in a very positive way, like it was our job to improve the world, and the end wouldn't be really the end of everything. It would be like we're working towards heaven on earth right now by
Right.
being socialist. They were socialists. They were like, let's help people. And then obviously at some point, probably the 80s, I don't know, it changed and became like the death cult that currently rules America. But that idea of what the apocalypse is, it just changes so much. And that's, I love that. Not so much the way that it dominates things now, but you know, I probably had a good point that I was working towards, but I realized I have to finish making this thing. So
we're talking a lot about endings, and I hope the group can connect some dots for me, because my conception of what I understand cosmic horror specifically to be about is at the top a smallness, a diminishing, and in my mind, particularly as a reaction to World War One. So the seminal catastrophe illuminated for everyone the end of the age of romanticism, the beginning of the age of irony. We experienced this hugely industrial murder, and saw like all of our hopeful ideas about technology turned toward needless, totally unnecessary, avoidable, and huge destruction of human life. And so to me, cosmic horror comes and says, what if that doesn't matter a tick to the universe? What if the largest thing that we've experienced is the smallest thing? And I don't really have a follow-up, but I'm hoping that anyone can help me draw the line from just that idea of smallness to grappling with endings, right? I don't think I can quite make that connection yet.
Yeah,
I guess sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
I was just going to say something that I've been interested in and am sort of poking with a stick for potentially working on, but that I've been interested in for a long time is history of psychology and psychiatry and how it was intertwined with an interest in the paranormal at its outset, like at the late 19th, early 20th century, and seances, the rise in the interest in seances, like where that came from was that people started to have a more scientific understanding of how the mind works and how the mind is like located in the brain, and like you cut out a chunk of the brain, changes the way your mind works. Like it's clearly is rooted in there in some way, and this really worried people because the idea that there's a physical, mechanical, that the mind is rooted in something physical, mechanical, suggests that there isn't a soul that's going to survive after you die. And so the whole seances thing was people were very preoccupied with the idea of survival, and you see the word survival a lot in the literature from that time, and it's, can the soul survive death? And that was what that meant. And where was I going with this? But the idea that I think it's part of a larger, like what you're saying, that it's an overall anxiety that, all of the stuff we're learning is more and more looking like we're not actually that important. We're not really the center of the universe. The universe doesn't really care if we could die out. The world would continue to exist. The universe doesn't really care. So how do we make meaning out of this? And B, how do we ensure our own survival? Because it doesn't look like anything is out there working to ensure it for us.
And I think the other thing about cosmic horror is we'd better hope there's nothing out there keeping an eye on us. But
it might not be our friend. It might emphatically not be our friend.
That's definitely part of where it came from. And also the other part of it was, as you mentioned, Going from a focus on horror being from things like folkloric monsters like vampires and werewolves and witches, things that were anti-biblical, to ghosts specifically because of that spiritualism movement during that period. So I just gave a talk about cosmic horror for HellCon a couple of weeks ago, but the other places where that came from was the development of archaeology as a practice, as well as the physical sciences as a practice. So what we've been doing basically since the Enlightenment is moving away from a human-centric view of the universe and moving us further and further and further down what they considered the great chain of being,
Yes.
until suddenly we're maybe not the least important things in the universe, but we are individualized, we are solitary and alone. And then out of this comes this idea of cosmic horror that arose, you know, with authors like Lovecraft and Poe and Arthur Machen and Robert E. Howard and stuff, going, so we're very, very insignificant. We already think we're kind of insignificant, but at least there's kind of this inherent humanity in our individuality, and there's a hope and a purpose in our lives. And now we're being told that the universe is actually run by these inconceivably powerful beings that we can't understand. So again, that's that pushback against science is doing its best, but science can't understand these things, and our minds can't wrap around them. Our minds aren't powerful enough. Our minds aren't ancient enough. We're simply less worthy. And I think a lot of it did start developing and speeding up after what was seen in, like, kind of, you know, the Boer War leading up to World War I, is that industrialized, not only are we not in control, not only are we no longer the center of the universe, but we're also, surprisingly, disposable. And so these powers that are sending these young men to die, well, at least we can understand that. For cosmic horror, there's no understanding it at all. So if it kills people or wipes people out or drives them insane, or, you know, destroys planets or destroys galaxies or does whatever it does, it's not doing that because it has a strategy in mind. It doesn't want to, like, take over the Rhineland or whatever. It
Yeah,
just,
you can't negotiate with it.
you can't negotiate with it. It's going to do whatever it does, and we are like bacteria to it. And again, the archaeology thing comes out of it too. With a lot of those earlier stories, the horror in those is that the characters are discovering that there was a large, very advanced civilization that existed before and was
Right.
wiped out. That's in a
What
lot of
happened to them?
Howard stories. That's in a lot of Lovecraft stories. That's in a lot of Algernon Blackwood stories. Is we have discovered what came before and it was wiped out. Here is our civilization, which is very advanced. That could be wiped out. I'm gonna go lie down. Is basically the response.
On that note, I want to look at what Jara's doing again.
Kitchen party.
I am at the end of my Mamuldo, so I'm gonna have a tiny sad one.
a baby one.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
runt of the litter.
yeah. Oh, very much so. There's about 4 minutes left for the Ghapama.
Can you smell the Ghapama, and is it delicious and aromatic?
You know, it just kind of smells like honey.
There was a lot of honey in it.
There was so much honey, and I made a mistake. I was supposed to cover the inside with honey, but I was supposed to add the rest of the honey to the filling, and I totally forgot. So I just kind of spooned it on top, and I was like, it'll melt, it'll run into the rest of it, surely. So we'll see how that goes. Last one. So yeah, and there's none stuck to the inside. It worked really well. I'm very happy with that. I'll have to keep making these and maybe do it better next time.
Nice.
Yeah, so now I'm just waiting for the oven to be free so I can bake these.
Everyone, how long do they bake the cookies?
Give me just a second to look at the recipe.
Okay. They seem like they would be pretty quick.
Yeah.
You might have to keep an eye on them to keep them from burning.
Yeah, they may or may not they will most likely not be done by 2. So
Okay.
we'll see what happens with that.
So at least the pumpkin can come out.
Yeah.
And we can have a look at it. So that was it's like cosmic horror. Our civilization will be wiped out. Cookies.
Let's look at a pumpkin.
And to tie it in, if possible, Jared is the cosmic horror to whatever microorganisms are part of this baking process.
The pumpkin. The pumpkin
He's,
was,
you know,
he's the
possibly
cosmic horror to the
conceive.
pumpkin.
Yeah.
He's the Yog Sothoth to the pumpkin.
He
That
just
was
embellished
always
for
my
reasons.
favorite Lovecraftian god, so I'll take
That's his
that.
favorite one. Yeah.
Yeah.
He just
He's
embellished
actually
for
baked
reasons
for
I
20
cannot
minutes,
understand.
so
Okay. Oh,
they're
really?
not going to be done.
You have to
But-
put them in the fridge or anything first? Because they're full of tea.
I'm leaving them on the floor, actually, because that is always very cold.
Okay.
They certainly won't fit in the fridge. Yeah. But got to see them being made, so that was fun. And now I've got a little bit of filling.
You can just eat it on toast or whatever.
It's got egg white in it, so I mean, theoretically still, yeah, but I don't like raw eggs that much.
You could cook it though. You could like bake it.
I
don't know.
could make a tiny little bit more dough and just make.
I feel like if you bake the filling outside of the cookies, you could sprinkle it on ice cream or something. It sounds like that kind of thing.
Maybe.
I'm gonna just jump in here, and I feel like I want to ask Laura a question because we sort of
No, I was enjoying. Well, I was
Lift her out of
actually
the horror
thinking,
discussion.
no, I was enjoying it. Although I'll let you ask me a question, Nadia. But I was going to say I felt like I needed to put a plug in because we were talking about the end of the world. And my favorite Canadian movie. I'm putting a plug in because it's.
I think I
has
can
anyone
have a
ever
guess.
seen Last Night?
No.
So it's really I'm not going to describe anything about it because but it's so insanely Canadian, and it's wonderful, and it was released. Don McKellar, who I have the biggest crush on actually, and once followed when I spotted. Or no, my friend followed him. My friend said she once followed him, and then I actually stalked him at a hardware store. But that was in the 90s. But anyway, I digress. But Don McKellar was, I think, asked to write a movie or make a movie prior to Y2K, because Y2K was going to be like everyone
that was going to be
about
the
the end of the
ended.
world, right? So and he wrote and made this wonderful movie and has Sandra Oh in it and the most amazing cameos, and it is
David Cronenberg.
Really?
You were supposed to give that away. This is really, oh my gosh, David Cronenberg in this movie. But anyway, so it's very Toronto, and if you can find it, I actually just pre-pandemic, they had a screening of it at a cinema in Toronto, and Don McKellar was there talking about it, and they were hoping to try and get a digital remastered version of it. I have it on DVD if anyone needs me to, like, I don't know. It's the DVD is often described as being poor quality, and they weren't really happy with it. But when they were talking about making the movie, they actually shot it in this crazy. It was shot in film, and it was this crazy process where I'm going to get it wrong, but you basically shoot it, and then the process you make oversaturates it and sort of bleaches. It's like a crazy bleaching process to the original actual film, your master film. So you're not actually altering a copy of your film. You're sort of like hoping that when you process it, it's going to look the way you want it to look. So, but anyway, I highly recommend it. I'm not going to say anything more. Don't read a synopsis of it. Just watch it. It's the most Canadian movie, and it is.
I started reading.
I break
the
into.
synopsis.
I lose it every time I
But then
watch
I stopped because it turns out there's 2 movies called Last Night, and one of them has Keira Knightley in it, and I was like,
Yeah,
I don't
watch
think
that
that's one. Okay.
No, watch the one.
Yeah, I was going to ask the year to help people search for this.
Yeah.
It's
Last
gotta be
Night is
90s or
apparently.
early
I don't
2000s.
even know if you can find it
It
streaming.
says here 1998, but I'm not going to read the synopsis. I'm not going to read the
No,
synopsis.
don't read this synopsis. So, but that wasn't.
I will say
I interrupted Nadia. So
Oh no, I was just gonna say I was hoping you were gonna say last night when you said that. The way I would it's kind of I hope this is not too spoilery, but it's the way I've been describing it to people who want to know what it's about, and it's kind of like Melancholia, only funny and kind of lo-fi.
yeah. I've not seen Melancholia, but based on a few accidental. I love going into movies completely confused and knowing nothing. So, but yeah, it's pretty great.
It's so Toronto.
It's so Toronto. It's shocking how Toronto it is.
Don McKellar was in like every Canadian movie for about 5 years in the late 90s and early 2000s.
I adore. I just like can't. Anyway, but you were going to ask
he
me
once
another
left. He
question.
once left an extremely stoned message on my outgoing answering machine in like the year 1998.
Why? What did he say?
Dish.
Tell the story.
Okay, well, this is like when I was working for this magazine in 97, 98. And I actually can't remember a lot of the details, but I was trying to get in touch with them for some article that we were working on. And I think I was leaving him messages, and obviously having a hard time getting hold of him, unsurprisingly, seeing as he was a hardworking Canadian movie star at the time. And then I got a voicemail from him, and this is like so long ago that my answering machine was like this big chunky fake wood paneling with an actual cassette, like a cassette in it that like recorded the incoming messages. And I got this message from Don McKellar, and it was just like, "Hi, sorry I didn't call you back. I was out of town, but I'm back now. And and he was like, okay, call me back, bye." That was the entire message. And it went on for like, it was almost like a full minute of that. It was the funniest thing. I'm just assuming he was extremely stoned, but honestly, that's what it sounded like.
Did you ever call him back?
I tried to. I never managed to get hold of him.
You still have the
Stopped
tape.
him at Maple Leaf Hardware down on College Street. That's where he was hanging out.
Nadia, do you still have the tape?
Possibly. I don't know where it would be though. I don't throw things out, so there is a good possibility, but I don't know where it would be. Sorry, Laura, and I think I was just gonna ask you something vague about, we were talking about this always happens when I'm like trying to think about a bunch of things and talk at the same time, is I forget words. Archaeology. You're talking about archaeology. And you work with artifacts, and I don't know where I'm going with this question, but I guess what I was trying to loop it back to artifacts, because I guess I just want to hear about like what are the kind of artifacts that you were working at when you were with the City of Toronto. I mean, I know you're sort of like limited in what you're allowed to talk about, but
yeah,
like what do you get a lot of?
Yeah, well, and you know what, we can still try and get a tour there, because before lockdown, I promised Nadia a tour of where I was working, and then there was a pandemic. And there's this great message between us saying, think something like, well, you know, I think maybe we shouldn't get together. It was like,
yes, it was like the one day, the day we had planned was the first day of lockdown.
It was basically the first day of lockdown. We thought, maybe not, because there's like no water in the stores, but should we? I don't know. We'll just give it a couple weeks and see. Anyway. But I can still get you a tour. So the way I usually describe, so I used to work for the City of Toronto. This is the actual City of Toronto has a number of museums. They have 10 museums or exhibition sites. And then I worked in a large building that housed anything that wasn't on display at the 10 museums. So these are historic house museums, a fort, like a mill, like one of them was called Todd Morton Mills. So they're all very different. They're spread across the entire city, which means they're quite far flung to get to them. But I worked in a central location where there's the remainder of the artifacts that are owned by the City of Toronto. And when I describe it, I say we owned everything, including the kitchen sink. You know, everything including the kitchen sink. And it's basically the artifact collection is supposed to be focused on the history of Toronto, but the city's been collecting for a while, so there's lots of stuff, and there's also responsibility not just to acquire things, but any archaeology that's found within the city limits. We hold a lot of archaeological items that have been found during digs, usually at our historical sites. So it's a real mix of things. We have other odd collections like the Eaton's department store, which was a kind of like Sears Roebuck, in that Eaton's had a catalog. They had stores across the country. It was a department store. It was a mail order store. And when
back
it
like early
eventually
20th century, right? Like the 1910s, I think.
Oh
it
yeah.
Started. Yeah.
Earlier, like pre 1900, they started off in Toronto and then spread across Canada. When they eventually fell apart, when the store closed, when it was put into receivership or whatever, the artifact collection, they actually had stuff that they were collecting because they had their own internal archives, and their artifacts came to the City of Toronto, and the archival stuff went to the Archives of Ontario, actually, which is also located in Toronto. My point being, there's some like really cool collections that are really encompassing like a company's history, or the history of Toronto, but kind of Canada, because it was a Canada-wide company. But then there's just like lots of really random stuff. So so we have things like taxidermy, we have paintings, we have sewing machines, there's furniture, there's cutlery, there's little tchotchkes and things. There's like lots and lots of stuff. And so I got to work on this really great collection that had such variety. It was really, really cool and interesting. And I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it sort of does.
Yeah.
I wasn't really clear on what my question was. I just wanted to hear more about the artifact.
So I mean, I was thinking about like I sometimes get asked like, what's the strangest thing you've worked on, and it changes depending on things. But like when I first started working there, we were restoring a historic house. And it's called Spadina House. So not even know what this is, but and what was really interesting about that project was that it used to be kind of set in Victorian times, which everything was kind of set to in the 70s and 80s. And this was a home that was donated to the city with all of its contents intact, and it was a big, huge building.
It's huge.
And they had it's a mansion basically, and they had all of the receipts, everything. The family had kept everything. It was just stored off in these rooms. So the advantage was when they went to take a look at refreshing that site and reinterpreting the site, because it's a site where there's people there that would sometimes dress in costume or interpret the site for people. They made a decision to interpret it to the interwar period. So if we're talking about death and world wars, they set it between the two world wars, and were able to bring it to that period because there wasn't. Oh my God, the pumpkin!
There it is.
Look at it.
It's so shiny.
That's the butter.
Yeah.
It smells kind of gross to me because it does smell like pumpkin. Just gonna put these in the oven really fast.
Sorry, Laurie, you can keep talking. I just wanted to see the pumpkin.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you. Oh my God!
I'm gonna cut into it right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I do want to see if it's like cooked through and what it looks like and stuff.
It's supposed to be cooked until when you kind of press it, your finger leaves an imprint, which is happening. So
good.
Like cool before cutting. I gotta cut into it so I can eat it and be disgusted by it.
Aw.
I will
feel
give it
bad
like
about
talk
a
for
minute to sit.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll just finish the story super
Yeah.
quick, which is that. So this site is a site that's been interpreted, and the research behind it was really, really good in that
Yeah.
they were able to find scraps of paper and recreate the wallpaper, which was quite amazing. The level to which things were recreated or reinterpreted. Some wallpaper was digitally reproduced, some of it was conserved that they found, some was. Oh, I love how he's taking a picture of this. It's really.
Yeah, well, I do forget and then Chris
Yeah.
yells at me, so.
But and now this site's being interpreted again. They're trying to decolonize the museums in Toronto, and so there's a really great. It was reinterpreted and reimagined recently by an artist who was imagining that the staff at the servants and staff at the house were actually the owners of it. So he went in and imagined her family as the ancestors of Spadina, and he these amazing paintings. And so I would encourage you to take a look at the site just to see how it's. I haven't actually been to see the installation, and I don't know if it's still up, but it's interesting how they're trying to reinterpret and reimagine these spaces. But yeah, but when I was there, and I get to work on cool stuff. So
tell me a little bit
it's
more.
kind of like crafts, kind of like
this is an open-ended question that I'm not really sure what I'm asking, but tell me about your relationship to restoration versus reimagining, or where these two concepts sort of meet for you in your work.
I'm kind of, when I was talking about this particular site, in a way, it's a curatorial interpretation of that site, and as a conservator, so I'm in my profession, I'm thinking more of the individual artifact, and there's sort of this division within the profession, I think, too, and it's changing, where there's historically a conservator would focus on the physical aspect only and the materiality of the artifact. So is it made of paper? Is it made of plaster? Is it plaster over paint? How am I going to deal with that? In conservation, restoration is considered sort of a bad word. The idea is that sort of the code of ethics that we're required to adhere to is that we would stabilize an artifact. We may, and usually we will do sometimes we'll do some minor, I would maybe say cosmetic. We'd stabilize it so that it's not going to continue to fall apart. We're going to put it in a safe place so it's not going to continue to fall apart. Anything we do to it is going to be reversible so that in 20 or 30 years, if somebody else wanted to go at it again, they could reverse what I've done. When I'm working on artifact, I have to write about it. I have to take photos of it before I do anything, and then take photos during and after. So it's this really documented process that I'm doing. And the new piece that's added on is that I may make a decision ethically that I'm not going to treat something, that I'm not going to do anything to it. And that idea and that sort of mental process of working through that is also based on, I might start thinking if it's an art piece, for example, that the intention of the artist is for it to degrade naturally, I'm not going to intervene in that. So there's a lot of really interesting ethics written about conservation and audio projects, or really interesting things on new media work that's been created. That sort of art side of things, they might make a decision to have if it's something collected by the Art Gallery of Ontario and it's new, they will likely make a decision to have an interview with the artist and document that about how the artist wants to have that piece conserved in the future. So let's say if it was a piece that had an old TV set, cathode ray tube, how would the artist, and then maybe it had a video component, and then maybe it had another visual component to it. How would the artist want that to be conserved in future? So in case of, there have been case studies where if it was, they made a decision they wanted to preserve the piece, and for the artist, it was really important that it be a physical TV and had a look like a 1970s TV versus it being a LCD screen or something. But they didn't care about if the video was transferred to DVD or to whatever, right? So there's ways to work through that ethically. And then the other component, and then I'll just shut up, is which is really interesting, is also this new awareness and importance placed upon ensuring that if we're dealing with artifacts that are from Indigenous or First Nations communities, Inuit, that we do not intercede. We work on that with the community, because the spiritual care of that artifact, or the return, if it's determined that the return of the artifact is, or the item, because it's not necessarily an artifact to them, it's a living thing, perhaps, or there's different levels. It's very, I'm just skimming this. This is like a huge topic.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But the idea that spiritual care is just as important as other things in its care. So it's something that I think the profession is hopefully adapting and moving. I think that's always been something we've thought about it. We're talking more openly or explicitly, or learning more about it in maybe the past 3 years, right? So anyway, I don't even know if that answered your question, Emmanuel. I'm sorry. I went off on a tangent.
That was very, very interesting, and I have thoughts. I'm just going to jump in a housekeeping-y kind of way and say it is now, we have now been going for, sorry?
Oh, the pumpkin. I just thought he was going to cut it.
Well, there's the pumpkin.
I
just want to
since
point
there's
out that
two, I do want to start cutting
I mean,
into it, but
yes, we will. Okay, I will just like put the pumpkin in the hot seat while I'm saying this, but I just wanted to say that it has now been 2 hours since we started, so if anyone needs to leave, I will understand. But we often, well, not always, but sometimes go over a little bit if there's more happening in the kitchen that we want to see. We want to see how the story ends.
Well, I definitely want to see Jared eat this and make a weird face about it.
Yeah.
So the weird face is definitely going to happen. I can just
point
tell.
out that if you want to leave, that's okay. But if you want to hang out, I think we're going to keep going for a little while. Okay. So Jared is cutting open the pumpkin, and I just want to say, Laura, I think that's really interesting. What's interesting to me is I'm struck by, I mean, I'm sort of obviously when it's a case of an Indigenous object that has meaning for the people who the community that it came from, but even the sort of everyday objects, the way that they're treated with this kind of respect, like they're repositories of memory. There's this kind of ritual that has to go on around preserving them. I think is really interesting.
Yeah,
look at this. It's a pumpkin flower.
Oh, I love that. It's so, oh my gosh.
The filling smells really good. The pumpkin itself smells very pumpkin-y. So
I found oh my god, I have to use torch.
I'm actually not quite sure how I'm supposed to eat this.
Yeah.
Is it soft enough? Does it seem cooked?
Make sure you get a big full of like filling and pumpkin so we can see the face.
Yeah, no, I'm getting both.
Yeah. It does look nice. Like, it looks very, very impressive.
Yeah, Krista, come get some. There's no way I'm going to eat this.
I love
Still
that it
really
has
hot.
Yeah, okay. Oh. He's thinking.
So the ideal situation has occurred, which is not being able to taste pumpkin at all. I'll just try a little bit of the pumpkin on its own, so if there is some kind of weird face, people can have that. Of course, there's a motorcycle. Maybe I just got a bland pumpkin because it doesn't taste like anything. But the filling is really good.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
It's probably very nutritious. It sounded nutritious when you were describing
Yeah,
it.
all
when you
those
did.
fruit and nuts and rice. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know. No, it just kind of tastes like oatmeal with, you know, fruit and nuts and stuff in it.
Does it taste
It's
spicy?
good. No, the spices are there, but they're not super prominent.
Okay.
So I don't know if I would write a song about it, but it's good.
How
Would you
many
eat it for?
people are coming to your house at
Yes.
this moment?
Is
Do we
there?
know?
Yeah, on
Is
a
the
scale
entire
of,
wedding party?
I see the dust
0
rising
to
in the
100.
distance.
Is it just the motorcycle guy?
Well, I'm not giving him anything, so
You only have one pumpkin.
That was the dilemma in the song was that there was only one pumpkin and 100 people. What to do?
Yeah.
What to do? So it sounds like something that's like I'm intrigued by this as a potential thing to eat for breakfast. That is
there's
a
the
little bit
pumpkin.
different. Uh-oh.
Interestingly, ugh. I hope everybody's happy now. Ugh. The top bit closest to the stem is the part that tastes the most like pumpkin. The rest of it is just kind of neutral. I'm sure that teaches us all a lesson in some way.
The music really made that too. Thank you, Emmanuel.
It did, yes. Is there like another kind of squash, winter squash that you like better, like maybe an acorn squash or something that you could stuff? Or no? All right.
I don't like squash in general.
Aw.
Yeah, I've never been one for squash or zucchini myself, but pumpkin I'm okay with usually.
Like so I like pumpkin bread and I like pumpkin muffins or whatever, but it's not because they taste like pumpkin. It's because the pumpkin is subsumed by everything else, which is what happens here for the most part. Why do I keep doing that?
The entertainment value is high.
Taking a bite from the part I know is going to harm me.
It's back.
The pumpkin is choosing violence.
Well, I mean,
this revenge.
It's
Revenge
owed,
of the pumpkin.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm not writing a novel about this. Don't worry about it.
No.
I am getting hungry, I have to say. I mean, it's getting close to dinner time, but I do like squash or pumpkin. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I also had a huge breakfast, but I didn't eat lunch, so now I'm just sitting here watching Jared eat. I'm like, this is fun.
My husband bought coffee and chocolate, so I'm kind of just getting hyper.
This is always the downside of kitchen party, is that if you cook something delicious, we can all only be like pressed up against the pain of the internet.
Well, I would happily get rid of this. So again, the filling is really good. I just don't feel like eating.
For one person, it's a lot. For 100 people, not so much. But for one person, one pumpkin. But it sounds like Krista is going to help you out with that. Oh, meanwhile, the cookies. Yes, the subplot of the cookies.
Yeah. I was going to say, Nadia, do you have that song pulled up? Could you play that for the?
I don't know if we can because I think it might be copyright. I think it's probably copyright.
Can you sing it for us?
He's Is
Really?
YouTube gonna flag a weird Armenian pop track from the 70s or 80s or whatever it was?
Well,
They are
Chris,
vigilant now, so
yeah, and
Oh.
Chris is picky about this, and he knows like if he probably has good reasons for it. Chris is the. By the way, I should
Grab that link
mention
and
that.
drop it in the Twitch chat then for people to explore, because
I mean,
it's a hot one.
it's a bop.
It's a bop. Yeah.
yeah, I could put the link in chat. I was just gonna say that since I brought that up, we are you're watching us on the Megaphonic Twitch network, and Megaphonic is a source of many interesting little podcasts and not so little podcasts, including a podcast that someone on this stream hosts or co-hosts.
Yeah.
About, of all things, J.R.R. Tolkien. And yeah, so megaphonic.fm, I believe, is our website. If you're interested in podcasts about Tolkien and books and horror movies and all that good stuff.
I will
I
say,
highly recommend The Spouter Inn.
oh, this pattern is so good. Yeah, speaking of that, so
Amazing.
I was just a guest on the Spouter Inn, talking about the book The Two Towers, which was a very fun discussion. So that episode was great, I think. But they're all good. And we are recording our next episode of By the Bywater tomorrow, because we're going to be talking about the movie The Two Towers. And judging by the animated discussion in the group chat, I think we're going to have some things to say. But I look forward to that I think it'll come out around the 1st of December.
So are
shameless plug for them. I had to put them back. They're supposed to be lightly browned.
Okay.
So I only set it for 15 minutes because the oven for the pumpkin is supposed to be hotter than the oven for the cookies, so it was still cooling down. I didn't want to burn them. So I put them back in for, I forget, a few more minutes to see. I don't want to overbake them.
Yeah. You probably do want them like a fairly light color still.
Yeah. I think the kind of thing where if they turn actually brown, it's overdone.
They sound like shortbread, basically. Like,
yeah, it's very
in the
similar
same
to a
cookie
shortbread.
family. Yeah. Very good. Well, here we go. Oh, amazing.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
So Krista is Jared's sister and Emmanuel's partner, for those of you on
those of you who don't know the lore.
who don't know the lore, and has a degree from she has a degree from the Le Cordon Bleu in France, right? She went there.
Not that one.
Okay, what happened? she was in France studying pastry at one point.
That was an internship.
Okay,
but she has a degree from Le Cordon Bleu.
Okay,
just not the one in Paris.
There we go.
Just a couple more
I don't know from my cordon bleus, but yeah. So there is a cook and baking beverage Discord. So what I'm saying is that's going to be like a quality cuisine related Discord because she has the knowledge of the foods. So I'm making an executive decision that we will wait around to see the cookies because I, for one, would like to see the cookies.
It shouldn't be that much longer.
Yeah.
I do want to say this: if you can find this cookbook, I think it's. I've made about 3 or 4 things from it now, and they've all been really good. This is where I got the mamoul recipe. And I also, as always, have to. I love her author photo so much. It's so like 70s glam. It's the best. Or like maybe 68 or something. Anyway, there is a recipe in here for a stuffed chicken with a very similar kind of rice and nuts mixture. That is god tier. So if you eat chicken and you are intrigued by that, this is a good book to get. Nice. There's like 30 seconds left on the timer. I'm just like...
the suspense is killing us all.
Yeah. Ooh, I should get a fancy platter out for the mummy.
I'm gonna like take it back to the artifacts and just I think where we were on the artifacts was that it sounds like there's almost a ritual or that you're describing around the taking the care of like taking
Yeah,
responsibility for maintaining them in the
yeah.
world.
I think I guess there is. There's a I think there's always a tension within the profession that we're scientific, but at the same time, it's uh, um, I don't know what I was trying to say about that, but it is sort of this weird mix of art and science. And in order to kind of for some, I think there's that importance of documenting and just to understand what's been done with it. And I'm just thinking though, on a tangent, like based on our discussion about the end of the world and all of that, you know, I do find every once in a while I'll be like really deep into like getting into it. I'll be writing a condition report on something and I get really into the minutia of it. I'm really enjoying it. And then I'm going, but when you think of climate change, it's like, or the whole, you know, but what if the whole museum just gets flooded? You know what I mean? And so, and just sort of that kind of moment of like, you know, getting so invested professionally, and I feel very important about being invested in the process. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's kind of, you know, you're getting down to the microscopic level, discussing something. You know, it's a 1 centimeter tear that is located in the top right quadrant of the thing, and then it's like 3 centimeters from the top, and you can get really, really deep into it, and then you think about climate change or the world ending or whatever, and it's kind of like, you know, it's I don't know what I think about it. It's just kind of it's curious. Professions are curious.
Something interesting there to me about being in an era where information is more and more preservable, has greater and greater longevity, but these artifacts you know, are not necessarily keeping pace. And like the way that we understand our history, the resources available to understand our history, evolve and change over time.
Right.
And
what's interesting?
I was just going to say, it doesn't even have to be the end of the world. It just has to be the end of like critical funding for these institutions that could take them out. You know?
Yeah, exactly. It's and it is something. I mean, like on one level, conservators will worry about you know, disaster planning as related to climate change. That's a huge thing, and covers a lot of topics that have come up in recent years, within museums burning, and there was a museum that was burnt, I think, in the Linton fire a couple of years ago, and or wars, you know, disasters happening because of being in areas of conflict. But I don't quite know where I was going with it, but it is sort of it's an interesting profession. It's like, and I find it's very creative too, but at the same time, I think hearing you guys talk about your creative work is like really interesting, and perhaps
it's hard to make space for it, but
like I kind of feel silly having a 9-to-5 job at a museum sometimes. I'm like, I should just be making art instead.
Try being a scientist. You feel extremely silly. You pass up your piece of policy, and then they pass it back down, and they're like, can you take the science out of it? Our corporate funders don't like this. And I'm like, you are why I drink. You guys are going to kill the entire planet to get 1 more quarter's worth of profits out of it. And they're like, ooh, 1 more quarter's worth of profits, though.
You're like, that's the only part of that sentence they heard. Like,
that's the only part of the sentence they hear, yeah. The artifacts thing, though, also reminded me, there's just a very, very small part in one of my books, one of my novellas, where it is, again, unfortunately, the end of the world. There are extra dimensional invaders. That's another cosmic horror one, These Lifeless Things. I don't know if anyone's read it, but yeah, there's a very short scene in there where two of the characters are going around the abandoned city and either protecting or moving or sandbagging statues and paintings and things they find in museums. And they get in front of the Modern Art Museum and they get into this huge fight about whether they need to protect the modern art. He's like, some of it's like giant. He's like, some of it's like giant metal blocks. That'll be fine. Nothing will happen to it. We should go. But it's like, you know, even though they're joking about it, we have to think. I think, you know, in the event of disasters, what do we save? What can we save? Like, should we be prioritizing the bronze statue that you can take off its base and bail with, or like the delicate, you know, moose hide dress that's sewn all over with glass beads that's going to fall apart if you touch it? How do you choose? Like, that's, I would find that horrifying.
Yeah, it's
So the shoe collection is in danger. You can only make it out.
Oh God!
With 2 or 3 pairs of shoes. Which ones are coming out?
I'm taking my cougar boot with me. No, but I mean, like, with my conservator hat on, like, you know, most museums have disaster policies,
right?
And they're constantly changing, and disaster procedures. So, like, you know, I can assure you we have a disaster plan at the BADA, and it's not because we think, it's just sort of but they're hard to work on because it's sort of nobody wants to imagine something bad happening. But most institutions, if they're lucky, will have one. Interesting that you were talking about digital and like real or facsimile, and I think there is a lot of people. I've heard a lot more and more that idea of, you know, seeing the original or seeing the object has this sort of different quality to it than seeing a digitized copy. And in some ways, I would think, like, working at a library, I actually trust my pieces of paper more than I would trust my digital files in the ability for them to like retain information. So I think that's something that the whole world of digital file management just freaks me. It just scares the crap out of me because it's just it's so scary. Because like, if I have a stack of documents and they, you know, a book can be packed in a library and burnt, and it might just burn the edge of the book, but sometimes the information's retained. But if you like have something like a disc or a magnetic tape, I mean, magnetic tape, some of them are only really, they're kind of all, they only really have had a 20 to 30 year lifespan, I think. So if you think about something like, so it's interesting that I don't know if anyone's written a novel where there's an electromagnetic something that would like wipe out all the digital information.
Oh, there are whole series.
I mean, that freaks me out. You know, I love my paper, and my digital stuff kind of is where I have
you
moments
even
of
look
anxiety.
at things like celluloid film that started falling apart like almost immediately after it was made, or like spontaneously combusting.
Yes.
And even now, what can we access in terms of information if we don't have electricity? You know, I don't know. It's I can't even use some of the CDs and DVDs that I burned in the last place I lived, because you give them like 5-10 years, they fall apart. Ooh,
but you're talking timely about ownership of information as well. But well, I'll bring it up after we look at these cookies.
Oh yeah.
So this is, we'll tilt this down. Fresh out of the oven.
Oh,
so it looks like it's a little hard to see, but it looks like it did. Yeah, it retained its print.
Yeah. I think the dough ended up being a little drier than it should have been. They're a little not as moldable as I thought. And then, you know, sprinkle them with
beautiful
confectioner's sugar. I got to give it a second to cool because there's no way that it won't kill me if I bite into it now.
Yeah, it has a filling, and it just came out of the oven. Yeah. So speaking of the digital apocalypse, Jared, how are you and Preemie going to continue to argue about like cannibalism and other ridiculous things if Twitter goes down?
Bad news. We already found each other on Tumblr.
Yes.
But if Tumblr goes, I will just start writing like really angry parchment missives. Like,
Yeah,
for my
I have
last
a
letter,
plan.
cannibalism in these circumstances is actually justifiable, or whatever, you know.
Dear Jared, please stop threatening to eat me. Best regards, Preemie. And so, because we all know that's where the cannibalism discussion is actually going. He thinks because I'm smaller than him, I'm food. That's literally what he thinks.
You look
He's
tasty.
laughing.
Yeah, the reptile brain is just like anybody smaller than me, I could just like, you know.
I thought we were friends.
Register as
Anyways,
prey.
my plan involves a pigeon, which is again going to be slightly tricky with local small bastard man in the house.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get the pigeon some kind of little like vest or something is the plan, and then use the pigeon to send messages to Jared if Tumblr goes down.
I see.
I probably won't eat the pigeon.
We sort of got into the
definitely
silly a
heard of-
little bit there, but I did want
Probably
to tie
there.
our discussion about artifact preservation and information preservation directly into that current event.
Yeah.
we were talking a little bit about the fragility of digital information.
Yeah.
Digital media.
Mhm.
And the other component of that we're living through right now with Twitter's imminent collapse is the reality that a lot of your digital media and information currently is not something that you personally own.
Yeah.
You know, most people's entire music collection, so to speak, is Spotify owned, and they can decide at any time that you no longer have it, right? In terms of our oral history of the pandemic, actually in particular, as it exists on Twitter, may not survive whatever that platform is going through right now. I don't really know if there are any dedicated digital archivists that are combing the platform and saving that information as much as possible. But like, unless people are exporting their Twitter archive en masse to have a separate record of that, those written documents, a huge amount of culture could be not preserved simply on the whim of a particular misguided individual. That's really that's. I don't have any answers. I only have questions about what information belongs to you still in the internet age.
And how fragile
Currently
it is.
downloading my archive right now. I've been trying to get it.
Yeah, it was on my to-do list for today, actually.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about it, then everybody else started worrying about it, and then I was like, there's a ton of. I mean, if I were just somebody who was using Twitter to like make silly jokes, I wouldn't care. But there's actually like, I have a body of work there.
Yeah.
I have stories that are up there that don't exist anywhere else, and the only way they're gonna survive, I'm downloading them now, so it'll be fine. But my thought process is like, there's no record of that. I have to do this, and this is ridiculous that one guy making a bunch of bad decisions could cost me access to something that genuinely is like a body of work. It is artistic creation, like it's entire things that I wouldn't have because I assumed they would always be around. It's like, it's infuriating. But I'm downloading it right now. It'll be fine.
I'm going to once again jump in and say we have seen the cookies and we have seen the pumpkins.
Yeah.
So I think it is time to end this broadcast.
Well, I'm going to eat a cookie. God, if I didn't do it.
People we won't the stream will continue after the broadcast if you want to hang around a bit. But yes, I was going to say, play us out, Emmanuel. So to anyone who is still watching, thank you so much. we're glad. That's right. So it survives the.
You joke, Krista, but truthfully, like, make multiple like have different physical drives on which you have backed up this information, printed out if that's reasonable to do. Like absolutely, yes.
There's a
Like,
term.
I can't imagine how big Jared's printout would be of his Twitter. Oh my god.
Lots of
Same.
cookies keep stuff safe. Locks.
Jared, how's your cookie?
Yeah, I want to know how the cookie is. You're not allowed to stop
He's
this,
still-
Nadia, till we know how the cookie
Okay.
is.
Oh, that's right. He's still eating the cookie.
Yeah.
I forgot he had not eaten the cookie yet. We had seen the cookie, but we didn't have the.
It's good.
Hmm.
I got because I was making them slightly larger than the recipe called for. I was guessing at everything, and I got the proportion of filling to pastry a little off. Like it should be more filling than that. But it's really good.
Is good.
Yeah, and I think they have to cool for a bit longer before you actually eat them because they're still a little bit like uncooked feeling. But as they sit, they'll solidify more. But
are they
really
they shortbready? Do they taste like? Because that's what they sounded like.
the texture is a little bit shortbready. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not quite the same, but still.
Mm-hmm. Will you be making these again?
I have to. I have the mold now.
You could also make just like straight up shortbread with that mold.
No, don't be ridiculous. No, I know I could. I was thinking about like other things I could do that wouldn't involve sitting there and like filling individual cookies the entire time. But yeah, I'll make them again. They're really good.
They do look delicious. Okay, so now I'm going to end the broadcast. Sorry, I had forgotten that there was one final thing that we had to see. But once again, thank you to everyone who stuck around and watched till the cookies were tasted. And thanks to our guests today. This was a really fun discussion once again. And Emmanuel, if you want to like play us out a little bit, you're muted, so we can't hear you. But
yeah, I'd be happy to. What are you looking for?
I don't know. What do you got? Something. It's
Tiny goodbye song that does not indicate that the world is ending.
Yeah.
Something
farewell song.
Hopeful.
Something hopeful. Something sweet. Like I said.
Something post-apocalyptic.
Something post-apocalyptic.
Yeah. Right. So we have to start